Hi students, hope you are fine. So one more session we will continue with, that is head injury. Already the seminar is over for you, but we will just like a recall, we just go through it, go through all the slides and have a brief look into it. So management of head injury. So what is head injury? So any degree of injury to the head ranging from scalp laceration to level of consciousness to focal neurological deficits. So head injury that can range from simple laceration to alteration in level of consciousness or damage to any part of the brain that can lead to focal neurological deficits. So traumatic brain injury, it is a non-degenerative, non-congenital insult to the brain from an external mechanical force possibly leading to permanent or temporary impairment of cognitive, physical and psychosocial functions with an associated diminished or altered source of state of consciousness. So what are the etiological factors? So motor vehicle accidents, falls, assaults, sports related injuries and firearm related injuries, all these may contribute to head injury. And highest among adults, and these head injuries are highest among adolescents, young adults and those who are older than 75 years of age, and 50% of major trauma deaths are due to traumatic brain injuries, and vehicle crashes are the leading cause of brain injury, falls are the second leading cause of head injuries. Then motor vehicle crashes constitute 44% of head injuries, falls constitute 26%, other or unknown causes 13% and assaults 9% and firearms is 8% of the head injury cases. And there is high potential for poor outcome in case of head injuries. And deaths occur at 3 points in time after injury, immediately after the injury, within 2 hours after injury and 3 weeks after the injury. The layers of the, now we will see the anatomy of the brain. So it consists of various layers. The outer is the skin, below it is periosteum, next is the bone, then the dura mater, arachnoid matter and pia mater. These are the coverings of the brain. See, this is if you just look into the cross section of the brain, you can see this is a picture of the cross LS longitudinal cross section of the brain. So this is the outer covering dura mater, middle is the arachnoid mater, this is the trabecular mesh, the cerebral, it's the cerebral cortex, perivascular space, this is the artery, and this is subarachnoid space and subdural space, the subdural space. Then types of head injuries, we can divide these injuries into scalp laceration, skull fracture, minor head trauma and major head trauma. The what are lacerations? They can be easily recognized. The most common type of injuries in case of head trauma, scalp is highly vascular, profuse bleeding will be there. Major complication is infection in case of laceration. Then skull fractures are linear. There will be break in the continuity of bone without alteration of relationship of parts. They can cause low velocity injuries. These linear injuries are due to low velocity injuries. Then depressed fractures are inward indentation of skull. So a powerful blow can cause inward indentation of skull. Then comminuted fractures are nothing but multiple linear fractures with fragmentation of bones into pieces, and compound fractures are depressed skull fractures and scalp laceration communicating intracranial cavity. Then this is a comminuted fracture, you can see there is break. So compound fracture, this is a compound fracture. Then according to location, these head injuries can be divided into frontal fracture, temporal fracture, parietal fracture, posterior fossa fracture, orbital fracture and basilar skull fracture. And temporal bone fracture, boggy temporal muscle because extravasation of blood, oval shaped bruise behind the ear in the mastoid region, and otorrhea will be there in case of temporal bone fracture. Oval shaped bruise behind the ear, you can see there is a very clear blue color discoloration in the mastoid region, which is called battle sign. Next, parietal bone fracture, which may lead to deafness, CS of photoria, discharge of cerebrospinal fluid through the ear, and bulging of tympanic membrane by blood or CSF collection, facial paralysis. Then orbital fracture, periorbital ecchymosis or raccoon eyes. Optic nerve injury will be there in case of this orbital fracture. Then basilar skull fracture may lead to otorrhea or rhinorrhea, bulging of tympanic membrane, battle sign, facial paralysis and tinnitus or vertigo. Then test to determine CSF leakage. Method 1 is check for presence of glucose, dextrose strip or test strip. If blood is present in the fluid, the test becomes unreliable. So go for the next method, that is allow leaking fluid, dip into a white pad or towel, observe for drainage. Within a few minutes the blood coalesces into center and the yellowish ring will be encircling this blood, which reveals that this leakage is CSF. Then minor head trauma may or concussion, which is nothing but a sudden transient mechanical head injury with disruption of neuronal activity and a change in the level of consciousness. It occurs when the brain suddenly shifts inside the skull and knocks against the skull's bony surface. Then typical signs of this concussion are brief disruption of level of consciousness, and concussions can last from a few moments to an unconscious state for over 3 minutes. Amnesia regarding the event and headache. And you might have seen in movies, some people after concussion, they might forget the event, how it has happened. Next, major head trauma or contusion. It is the bruising of the brain tissue within a focal area. It is usually associated with a closed head injury. Next is hoop. Contour hoop is often noted. This is hoop, contour hoop. So this is the injury. Just have a pictures look into this. In this type of injury, contusion occurs both at the site of direct impact of the brain on the skull, which is called hoop, and at the secondary area of damage on the opposite side away from injury, which is counter hoop, leading to multiple contusion areas. Next is lacerations. It involves actual tearing of brain tissue and often occur in association with depressed open fractures and penetrating injuries. Intracerebral hemorrhage are commonly associated with these lacerations. Then coming to the complications or intracranial hemorrhages, you can see just this is a brain hematoma, blood clot formed. Epidural hematoma, subdural hematoma, this is intracranial hematoma. Then extraaxial hemorrhage may be epidural hematoma or subdural hematoma. This subdural hematoma may be acute and chronic. Then subarachnoid hemorrhage, intraaxial hemorrhage, intraparenchymal hemorrhage and intraventricular hemorrhage. Epidural hemorrhage, it is a neurologic emergency, most common type of intracranial hemorrhage, and results from bleeding between the dura and the inner surface of the skull. It is due to blow to the temporal and parietal bone, commonly bleeding by arterial origin, breakage to middle meningeal artery, venous, dural venous sinus. Then clinical manifestations are: patient is initially unconscious after the trauma. The patient then awakens and has a lucid interval followed by a decrease in level of consciousness, headache, nausea and vomiting. Then on the head, the CT, the clot is bright biconvex shaped. This is the clot, biconvex shaped and has a well-defined border that usually respects cranial suture lines. Next, a rapid open craniotomy for evacuation of the concealed clot and hemostasis is indicated for epidural hematoma. Then prevention of cerebral herniation can dramatically improve the outcome of the patient. Next is subdural hematoma. Subdural hematoma occurs from bleeding between the dura mater and the arachnoid layers of the meninges. It may be of 3 types: acute subdural hematoma, subacute subdural hematoma and chronic subdural hematoma. Subdural hematoma usually results from venous bleeding, usually from tearing of a bridging vein running from the cerebral cortex to the dural sinuses. Hematoma may be slower to develop. Acute subdural hemorrhage develops 24 to 48 hours after the severe head trauma and commonly related to acceleration, deceleration injury. Clinical manifestations are as same as the elevated intracranial pressure. And the size of the hematoma determines the patient clinical presentation. Decreasing level of consciousness from drowsy and confused to unconscious. Headache, ipsilateral pupil dilatation and motor signs will be there. On the head CT scan, the clot is bright or mixed density crescent shaped, lunate and may have a less distinct border. Open craniotomy for evacuation of the clot and decompression is indicated for any acute subdural hematoma more than 1 centimeter in thickness or smaller hematomas that are symptomatic. Then acute subdural hematoma. It usually occurs within 2 to 14 days of the injury. The alteration in mental status of hematoma develops. Progression depends on the size and location of the hematoma. Then chronic subdural hematoma. It develops over weeks or months after seemingly minor head injury. The peak incidence of chronic subdural hematoma is in 50 to 60 years of age. Clinical manifestations is progressive alteration in level of consciousness. Then epidural and subdural hematoma. This is the epidural hematoma and this is the subdural hematoma. Here the dura mater is also here, and here the dura mater is intact. Subdural hematoma. So epidural and subdural hematomas. Location will be in case of epidural hematoma between the skull and the dura. Subdural is between the dura and the arachnoid mater. Involved vessel will be temporoparietal and middle meningeal artery, frontal anterior ethmoidal artery, occipital transverse or sigmoid sinuses will be affected and vertex superior sagittal sinus will be affected in case of epidural hematoma. And symptoms are, in case of subdural hematoma, bridging veins will be affected. Then symptoms in case of the epidural hematoma, lucid interval followed by unconsciousness. Subdural hematoma is gradually increasing headache and confusion. In case of CT appearance in epidural hematoma, the hematoma appears biconvex lens limited by suture lines. Then subdural hematoma appears crescent shaped, crosses suture lines. Then subarachnoid hemorrhage. The bleeding occurs between the arachnoid and the pyometer. The causes of subarachnoid hemorrhage include rupture of berry aneurysm, trauma, fracture, which can lead to fracture at the base of the skull leading to internal carotid aneurysm. The clinical features in case of subarachnoid hemorrhage are explosive headache, worst headache of patient will tell worst headache of my life. Nausea and vomiting, decreased level of consciousness or coma, and signs of meningeal irritation. Patient will be irritable, having nausea and vomiting. Then increased attenuation is seen in case of CSF, spaces over the cerebral hemispheres in case of CT scan. Then intracerebral hemorrhage. Intraaxial hemorrhage is hemorrhage that occurs within the brain tissue itself. There are two types of intracerebral hemorrhage: intraparenchymal hemorrhage and intraventricular hemorrhage. Intraparenchymal hemorrhage extending into brain parenchyma, and intracranial hemorrhage in case of intraventricular hemorrhage extending into the ventricles. Then causes are hypertensive vasculopathy, ruptured aneurysm and trauma. Then clinical presentation is rapidly progressive severe headache building over several minutes, often accompanied by focal neurological deficits, nausea and vomiting, decreased level of consciousness. And signs and symptoms depend on the site of the hemorrhage. Basal ganglia or internal capsule is affected, then patient will have hemiparesis and dysphagia. When cerebellum is affected, ataxia and vertigo will be there. Falls, cranial nerve deficits and coma will be there, and involvement of cerebral cortex can be identified by hemiparesis, hemisensory loss, hemianoxia and dysphasia. And diagnostic measures are history collection and physical examination, computerized tomographic scan, magnetic resonance imaging and positron emission tomographic scanning and X-ray. And taking a history in head injury involves mechanism of injury, loss of consciousness or amnesia immediately after injury, and when the patient has regained his consciousness and level of consciousness as seen and on transfer, evidence of seizures immediately after injury or 1 hour after injury or no seizures, and history of vomiting, pre-existing medical conditions like diabetes, hypertension, and use of medications like especially anticoagulants, and the use of any illicit drugs and alcohol. This history must be collected. Then in physical examination, Glasgow Coma scale, spelling mistake is there. So Glasgow Coma scale, you know very well what are the things you have to observe in Glasgow Coma scale, and then pupil size and response. Signs of examining for signs of any skull fracture like bilateral periorbital edema, which is called raccoonitis, battle sign, bruising over the mastoid, then cerebrospinal fluid rhinuria or roturia, hemotympanum or bleeding from ear, then full neurological examination, tone, power, sensation and reflexes. Then computerized tomographic scanning is considered the best diagnostic test to evaluate the craniocerebral trauma because it allows rapid diagnosis and intervention in the setting. The National Institute for Health and Clinical Excellence has published some guidelines for when to carry out a CT scan in a patient with head injury. Then NICE guidelines for CT in head injury, Glasgow Coma scale, which is less than 13 at any point, and GCS Glasgow Coma scale 13 or 14 at 2 hours. Focal neurological deficit, suspected open, depressed or basal skull fracture, seizure, presence of seizure, and vomiting more than one episode. Urgent CT head scan if none of the above. But if the age of the patient is more than 65 years or any coagulopathy patient is taking any coagulopathic drugs like warfarin and dangerous mechanism of injury is the CT within 8 hours has to be carried out. Then antegrade amnesia is there with greater than 30 minutes. CT has to be collected within 8 hours. Then an MRI scan is more sensitive than CT scan in detecting small lesions. A cervical spine X-ray indicated to detect any cervical injury, and transcranial Doppler allow the measurement of CBF, cerebral blood flow. Then severe head injury is best managed in a neurointensive care setting. The patient should be positioned with the head up to 30 degrees. It is important to ensure that the cervical immobilization collar does not obstruct venous return from the head. Then airway and ventilation. Patient in traumatic coma is unable to protect their airway and is at risk for aspiration. So we have to maintain a normal respiratory rate and normal saturation, oxygen saturation. Then circulation and cerebral perfusion, pressure, hypotension and any hypoxia as a major cause of secondary brain injury. A systolic blood pressure less than 90 mm of Hg, worst outcome in traumatic coma is that. Then cerebral perfusion pressure should be maintained at greater than 65 mm of Hg in severely head injured patients. Then control of intracranial pressure. Position head up to 30 degrees. Avoid obstruction of venous drainage from head. Sedation or muscle relaxant. Normocapnia. Diuretics. Use of furosemide and mannitol. Seizure control. Maintenance of normothermia and barbiturates is very important to maintain normal intracranial pressure. And medications used to maintain these are osmotic diuretics, anticonvulsants, barbiturates and calcium channel blockers. And osmotic diuretics like 25% dextrose, that is mannitol, and 1.5 to 2 grams per kg of IV infused over 30 to 60 minutes. Then anticonvulsants like phenytoin, where it may inhibit spread of seizure activity in motor cortex, and dosage is 10 to 15 milligrams per kg will be given as loading dose, and maintenance dose 100 milligrams IV per oral or IV or per oral, and every 6 to 8 hours or as and when necessary. Then barbiturates, pentobarbital will be used to reduce the brain metabolic rate and help in reducing the intracranial pressure. Dosage is 100 milligrams IV or 150 to 200 milligrams IL. If medical treatment doesn't work out for the patient, then surgical management may be indicated. It is indicated when the Glasgow Coma scale decreases by 2 or more points between the time of injury and hospital evaluation. Patient presents with fixed and dilated pupils. The intracranial pressure exceeds 20 mm of Hg. Then types are burhole surgery, opening into cranium with a drill. Craniotomy, bone flap is temporarily removed from the skull to access the brain. Then craniectomy, excision into the cranium to cut away a bone flap. And cranioplasty, surgical repair of a defect or deformity of the skull. Then nursing management is maintenance of ABC, airway, breathing and circulation. Glasgow Coma 4, GCS maintenance, doing neurological examination periodically, signs of elevated, monitoring for signs of elevated intracranial pressure and monitoring for signs of CSF leakage. And the possible nursing diagnosis are ineffective tissue perfusion related to interruption of blood supply associated with cerebral hemorrhage and edema, acute pain related to trauma and cerebral edema, hyperthermia related to increased metabolism and loss of cerebral integrative function secondary to possible hypothalamus injury, and impaired physical mobility related to decreased level of consciousness and treatment in post-bed rest, anxiety related to abrupt change in health status, hospital environment and uncertain future, risk for complication related to cerebral edema and hemorrhage. Okay. So these are the nursing diagnosis. I think interventions and all we have discussed in seminar, and I think I need not explain you. If you don't remember, just please go through your textbook. Then preventive measures are health promotion, prevent car and motorcycle accidents, to wear safety helmets, using of safety helmets. Then rehabilitation, ambulatory and home care. Rehabilitation is very important. Once the patient is discharged from the hospital, maintenance of nutrition, bowel and bladder management, prevention of seizure disorders, and family participation and education is very important. You have to educate the family members what to do with the patient, how to take care of the patient at home, and what education they need. And in unconscious stages there are two, that is stupor and coma. Stupor, it is a state of partial or near complete unconsciousness in which the patient is lethargic, immobile and has a reduced response to stimuli. Coma is a state in which the patient is totally unconscious and cannot be aroused even with strong stimuli. Okay. In case of persistent vegetative state, it is a condition in which awake patients are unconscious and unaware of their surroundings and the cerebral cortex is not functioning. Vegetative state can result from diffuse injury to the cerebral hemispheres of the brain without damage to the lower brain and brainstem. The vegetative state is considered permanent if it persists for more than 12 months after traumatic brain injury. Okay, this you have to remember. So I think the topic is more clear for you. Okay, in next session we'll discuss some other topic, girls. Please keep reading your books. Okay.